Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about changing an equation from one form to another, because often our equations will not be written in the form of y equals mx plus b, but we want them in that form. For an example, and all we got to do is realize that we need to manipulate the equation to get it to that form, you might have it look like this. And by the way, this is called point-slope form, which I'm not going to go into the exact details of point-slope form. I just want to introduce it, that it's called point-slope form, and we'll talk more about that in another lesson. But how do I get this equation here, which is a linear equation, to look like this? Well, with just a few simple steps. First of all, if you notice the y equals mx plus b, this slope-intercept form has no parentheses. So let's remove the parentheses. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute in to remove the parentheses. So I have y minus 2 equals 1/4 times x plus 1/4 times 8, which is going to be 2. Okay, so now I have no parentheses. The next thing I notice is the y is always by itself when it's in slope-intercept form. There's no plus or minus or numbers in front of the y or after the y. So I need to remove this minus 2. So all I do is add 2 to both sides, making sure I add to my like terms. Don't add 2 to the 1/4 x, that's not a like term. Those cancel. So what I do to one side, I must do to the other, and I get 1/4 x plus 4. And I am in my slope-intercept form. I know my slope and I know my y-intercept. Now, as we go through doing these, again, sometimes we have them in other forms because it's easier to write things without necessarily having fractions all over. Like for instance, here's another equation that's in slope-intercept form. Or sorry, point-slope form, not slope-intercept form. This equation's in point-slope form, and we want to convert it to slope-intercept form. So it's just like the previous one. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute in that negative 1/6, watching our signs as we do so. So we have y minus 1 equals a negative 6/7 x. Minus times a minus is going to be plus, and 1 times 6/7 is 6/7. Now again, we don't want this minus 1 next to the y. We want the y completely isolated or alone on the left side. So I go y equals negative 6/7 x. Now this is where students are going to go, oh, because we get fractions, I have that 6/7, and I'm going to add 1, because what I did was I added 1 to both sides, right? Well, to add 1 to 6/7, I got to get a common denominator. So I might make that 7/7 to give me my common denominator. And then I'm adding 6 plus 7, and my final equation is plus 13/7. So again, I get this fractional y-intercept, which is perfectly fine. So again, converting from one form to another form is what this lesson's about. Now, they might try to be, I want to say, a little tricky or funny to make sure you're paying attention. Negative 13x plus 19. So this won't be point-slope form, but they'll give you that. Well, hopefully you're smart enough to realize that's y equals mx plus b. It's in the right form. The only problem is that y is on the right side of the equal sign. So all we got to do is flop the sides. But don't change signs when you do that. Just rewrite it as y equals negative 13x plus 19. So again, don't make it harder than it is. But some, and by the way, this is going to a different form that we call standard form or general form. Some will look like this one. And now this one is going to be a little bit harder, not too much harder, but you have something like 15x minus 3y equals negative 5. And again, we want to get it into the form of y equals mx plus b. Well, if I want the y on the left and I want it by itself, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the terms that don't have a y. So I'm going to remove this this 15x, and I'm going to do that by minusing 15x. Minusing 15x from both sides of the equation. Now that's not a like term with the negative 5, so I don't combine them. Plus, I want the x term in front. So make sure you put the negative 15x in front of that as we go to do this. Those cancel. We're left with a negative 3y is equal to a negative 15x minus 5. So again, I put the negative 15x in front of the negative 5. They're not like terms. I did not actually combine them. Now I have one last step. I need to get rid of this negative 3 that's being multiplied by the y. And for some reason, this is where students are going to start making mistakes, because when I divide, because I need to divide, I don't add 3 to both sides. I divide by negative 3, I got to divide the whole right side by negative 3 as well. So again, that gives me y equals a negative 15x minus 5 all over negative 3. Now, that's not this form. It's not slope-intercept form. I need to separate this into two fractions. In other words, I need to separate it into a negative 15x over negative 3. Now, I got to be careful here. I'm going to, I want to make sure I don't confuse you. See, I got a negative, and I got to realize that. So I'm minusing a 5 over a negative 3, right? So I'm accounting for both minus signs. So then we reduce if possible. And negative 15x divided by negative 3, well, that's just 5x. A minus becomes plus. And then 5 doesn't divide by 3 evenly, so I leave it as 5/3. But a little quicker and easier way than separating it like that is just divide these two terms and then divide those two terms, and then write your thing, your final solution down. So in other words, I'd do negative 15 divided by negative 3 is 5. That's times the x. Don't forget there's the x there. A negative divided by a negative is positive, right? And then 5 over 3 doesn't divide evenly, and I get this fractional y-intercept, which is perfectly fine. So again, when you're solving these, what they're called standard form of equations, just realize that when you divide over the number that's in front of the y, you got to divide both terms. Let's do another one of those, because I want to make sure you get that process down. Let's give you 18x plus 6y equals 19, and do the same thing. First thing we're going to do is isolate the term that contains the y by removing the term that doesn't, this x term. The minus 18x from both sides, minus 18x. Okay. Those cancel on the left, giving me the 6y equals. Now remember, slope-intercept form has this x term in front of the 19, so let's make sure we put the minus 18x in front of the 19, which is positive, so it's plus 19. Now I just got to divide by the 6 to get y completely alone. I divide the whole side by 6, so I get y equals. Now negative 18 is divisible by 6, gives you negative 3 times the x. Don't forget the x. And then 19 divided by 6 is not divisible, doesn't divide nicely, but there's a plus symbol there, so I put plus 19 over 6. And there would be your final answer. So hopefully this will make your assignment easy today. If you have any questions at all, though, do bring them to class, and I will help you then.